Okay, so good evening everyone and welcome along to our Go Race and our Go Ride Racing webinar. It's lovely to see you all here tonight. We are going to run through this this evening. Some of you might have already attended our Return to Competition Guidance webinar, so it's lovely to see those of you who are there back again. And for those of you whose first time it is to one of these webinars tonight, we're going to run through some stuff tonight to hopefully put you in a position where you feel confident and comfortable and able to deliver some of these events if you're able to. So your webinar delivery team tonight is going to be myself. I'm Morgan Brown, I'm the National Events Officer at Scottish Cycling, and Fraser Johnson, who's the Club Development Manager, is going to be co-presenting with me. So because these two event formats, they kind of cross over between the Club Development team and the events team, so we're going to work on this one together tonight. What we're going to go through tonight is just a wee overview of where we're at now, so that's in terms of the guidance document, the return to competition, touching on a bit of COVID stuff, and then we're going to delve into the Go Race formats and the Go Ride Racing formats with an overview of these classifications as well as some examples, and then hopefully at the end we're going to have time for some questions. In terms of housekeeping, we are recording this meeting tonight so that we're going to be able to use it for the future and we can share it with people that haven't made it along tonight. So as long as you're all aware of that fact, you're more than welcome to switch off your cameras if you're not comfortable with being on screen. In terms of muting yourself, can you all please leave yourselves muted throughout while we're running through the presentation? It'll help us cut down on background noise. If you've got questions, both Fraser and I will be monitoring the chat box. If you hover over the bottom of the screen, you'll see a wee speech bubble that says chat. If you click on that, the chat box will open up and you can pop any questions that you have as we go through into there. Both Fraser and I, depending on who's speaking, will be checking in there, but also please do use it as a forum to have discussion amongst yourselves as event organisers and club reps and people that are on this call, just to pitch in with your opinions and views. And I think that's all of our housekeeping points. Thanks, Fraser. Perfect. So in terms of our Scottish cycling guidance, a lot of you will have seen it by now. We have developed our guidance and it was last updated on the 11th of September. We're regularly updating it as and when we get updates from the Scottish Government. This is guidance which is common across all cycling organisations and events. It is the one which should be used for everything. It's signed off by Sport Scotland, so it is Scottish Government endorsed, and therefore we know that we're following the most accurate and up-to-date guidance in terms of looking at events, but also the wider cycling activities, which I know many of you have got an interest in. In terms of the competition side of things specifically, we have been working on a phased return to competition. So it's really, really exciting. We are at the stage now where we've got a full introduction of events with the club confined time trials. The first ones to return just at the end of August there, and open events apart from road races are now allowed. We have got some limitations there in terms of the senior riders. We've got that limit that groups can be no more than 30 riders and they must race completely distinctly from any other groups of riders out on the course for the entire duration of the competition. For the youth and junior riders, we don't have any limits, which is fantastic. However, it should all be done on having as few participants as possible in attendance at any one time. There is no hard and fast number there, which I do appreciate it's really beneficial. However, it does pose some challenges, and like I said at the start, we're always here to answer your questions, so please don't hesitate to get in touch if you do have questions on that number. In terms of the physical distancing, it's quite a standard procedure. Everyone should maintain physical distancing at all times while not competing for those over the age of 12. For under 12, they don't need to physically distance, and during competition, we don't have that requirement. We're really, really lucky in organised sport and competition that we have got so much flexibility in terms of these guidance compared to wider society. It's fantastic, and it's a real recognition by the Scottish Government and Sport Scotland how important sport is in that sort of return to activity. Most importantly, and why we're here tonight, is that all events this time are non-ranking and riders will not receive ranking points. So that gives us a really fantastic opportunity to sort of try out some different things, do some flexible formats. We all know that people have perhaps not been training, they've not been riding in the way that they usually would at this point in the year throughout the start of the season. And therefore we've got a real opportunity to try different things and give them something different, which you maybe wanted to try for a while, but you've been unsure how it will go down, or actually you just want to be quite creative with your event. So we're going to run through some of those things tonight. Just in some of those practicalities in terms of a COVID-related return to competition. At this stage, no matter what level of event, whether it's go ride racing, whether it's club confined, we do advise that you should have online entry only. I'm not necessarily saying that should be through the British Cycling Event Management System, particularly for club confined events, perhaps some of those more low-key events, as long as you've got some system of making sure that you're sort of in control of the number of riders that are going to be showing up at your event at any one time. So make the most of online entry. The British cycling system has been updated, so it now includes a rider declaration. For those of you who are familiar with the sign-on sheets, that's a small text in the box at the top of the sign-on sheet. Riders now agree to that when they enter an event, which is fantastic, and it means that we've got way more flexibility at sign-on. You should still have that declaration displayed at entry to your sign-on process, and if you are using an external online entry system, you do still need to get that signature from the riders to make sure that they do agree to that rider declaration. So please be aware of that. You've got quite a few options in terms of how you check riders in now. So previously, as we all know, you've had to have everyone march up to the sign-on table, pick up the pen, sign everything, make sure they filled it all in. Whereby now you can do it in different formats. So some of the examples we've heard from down south in England who have returned to competition has been that riders are being signed in at the entrance to the car park. That's where the sign-on marshals are, and whoever's in the car reports to sign on and is handed their race pack at that point. Alternatively, what we've heard from down south is that some events have been using, particularly for larger family events, just one family rep from that family needs to appear at the sign-on, and then they can pick up everything that's required for the family. So do what works best for you at your event, how you can sort of reduce that grouping of any people, of sort of a number of people in one place at one time. One wee thing that we do want to share with you is the Scottish Cycling COVID-19 guidance for behaviour code. So this is really useful. British Cycling did make one of these, and you will see that in your British Cycling online system. However, we've made a Scottified version. It is not just blue and purple. We're not that pedantic. We've got some of the Scottish words in there, for example, physical distancing, and just making sure that we've got test and protect rather than the English words there. Fraser, can you just remind me, have we got this online currently?
No, we're going to add it onto the COVID-19 section on the website, so it'll be there to download from tomorrow.
Fantastic. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the link for our all our guidance in there for anyone that's not yet managed to. So this is just a really handy thing. Stick them up all around your event, send them out to riders in advance of the event. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's a lot of what people are already used to doing when they go into Tesco's, when they go into Aldi's, supermarket of your choice. These are the things we're doing, that we're living currently. None of it should be shocking for people, but it's really, really good to remind people of some of the things we expect of them. So moving on to number distribution. So as you'll all know, this is one of the most important part of events, is getting numbers on people so that we can identify them. I'm sure I'm not the only one that stood trying to do race results when people's hair is over their numbers. They put an extra jacket on and you're having to try and note it down in any which way. So numbers or identifying features are still really important. However, we have got that bit of flexibility that they don't quite maybe need to be what they usually would be. You could have perhaps the riders printing the numbers at home prior to the event, or making their own ones, whether that's cardboard or pens, mountain bike number boards on the front of their bike, or some other system. Do make sure they're waterproof and durable. It is Scotland, and trust me, I've been there when you're trying to identify people with soggy number boards. It is difficult. So do think about what works for you. You could alternatively, what we've heard working well down south, is a washing line format, with strings of numbers hung either from gazebo legs, stakes, something like that, where the riders then go and select their own numbers. Obviously, particularly with children, you probably do want to have that supervised. I say particularly with children, I mean particularly with adults. You want somebody to make sure that they pick up the right number, but that's a really good idea and something to consider that may work well for your event. Alternatively, if you're thinking of doing multiple events, or it's something that you're organising within your club, you could allocate the same number for the duration of that series event, or perhaps for the winter season, because I think most of us probably know that some of these guidance things are not going to be changing anytime soon. So think about what works best for you, what resources your club have, and how you can involve the club committee, event organising committee, and riders in that. Just in terms of getting the numbers back at the end of the day, you can use disposable numbers, therefore the riders can take them home, they can do what they like with them. or you can have soapy buckets that the numbers can get returned to. We've heard of that working well down south as well. Some of the big clip lock buckets that are full of soapy water, numbers go in it, lids gone, and then you can fill them when you get home. Again, just do what makes you most comfortable. This is one of the most important areas that we've gone through, and that's the movement event. I'm sure all of you, like myself, will have been going into supermarkets and you'll have been following the arrows. You'll have been going into various places, your places of work, etc. And we all follow the sticky arrows on the floor. Those things are not accidental, and someone spent a lot of time thinking about them. And during an event, that will be you as the event organizer with your event organising committee. So consider what's going to work for you. The biggest bit of advice here that I can give is to keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Think about the flow of people. Where are they going to need to arrive? Where are they going to park? How are you operating sign-on, and how do they get there? What's then their route to the race course? And how do they get back to their car? Try and have as few diversions as possible, and try and keep that flow moving. You can do that particularly with the timings, to ensure that people don't have time to mingle, they don't have time to wander around. They can all socialise on social media. As lovely as it is for an event, that's unfortunately not where we're at right now. So think about these things. Consider your one-way systems. How are you going to have rider pens? And the most important thing is to communicate that plan. Make sure people know what they're doing. Make sure it's as clear as possible. It'll just reduce your workload on the day, as we always say. Just simply in terms of those planning groups, and I've touched on this already, we should have groups of no more than 30 riders for your seniors, which is your over 18s. And overall, there should be as few people in attendance as possible at any one time. So this is where you need to think about your groups and how they're going to arrive, register, practice, race and leave. And this is where the Go formats can really come into their own, because they offer you that additional bit of flexibility that standard sort of age categories and classifications maybe would not have. There's some really good examples from down south, and I'll share the links in the box once Fraser gets talking later, from some of the events that have taken place, particularly Southern XC and the Bobington Bomber circuit races. We've got really good systems for groups arriving, registering, practicing and leaving by splitting them into groups 1 to 6 and then having various sections A and B, and depending on what group you are is where you go. So I'll share some of those links with you later on, because I think it's really useful to sort of take some of that knowledge from things that started happening down south, who are about a month ahead of us in terms of the return to racing. Just in some general guidance, bunch racing is now possible, which is fantastic. But again, just to reiterate, please do what you are most comfortable with. This very much is an opt-in scenario for the end of this season. To get events back on the calendar. In no way are we sort of forcing you to do anything, but we do want to be here to support you if you are keen and you do want to talk through how to make things happen. During the competition, physical distancing does not need to be maintained. However, for seniors, we do still advise that that should be maintained as far as possible. Doing so by thinking about your starts, your gridding, and how many riders you will have on the course at any one time within that group of 30. Importantly, all volunteers and spectators must physically distance at all times, and particularly with spectators, they must follow the general Scottish Government guidance, which is now groups of 6 people from up to 2 households. This is one of the most difficult areas it is going to be for you to manage. I've spoken to some event organisers from England, and they have said it's like herding spiders, which I do think is quite a wonderful analogy for this section. The most important thing that you can do as an event organiser is make it as easy as possible to be able to follow those guidance restrictions. And then just quickly on the hand hygiene, I think we probably all know this because we're living it. Almost everyone's got a wee bottle of hand sanitising gel in their bags these days. The most important thing is that participants should be prepared to be self-sufficient. So no matter what level of event, that is what you should be reiterating in your pre-event communication. They should be taking everything that they will need for the duration of the event, including hand hygiene, any refreshments, etc. As event organiser, as much as you can put in place is fantastic, however, that should be considered additional to what the participants are taking themselves. And just a couple of wee tools, which these are generic across all events, whether you're organising mountain bike, cyclocross, whether it's regional C, non-ranking, or whether you're going to delve into one of these Go options. We've got 2 additional documents, one of which is the COVID-19 planning tool and the other is the risk assessment. So this is the planning tool and it's a non-mandatory document. This is one that can help support you in your event planning. It allows you to look at some of the financial areas as well as some of the risk areas. It's quite good if you want to liaise with your local community, your landowners, your facility operators, and this is a really additional useful tool. Like I say, it's not mandatory and you don't need to upload it. The one that I do need you to upload to me though is the COVID risk assessment. It is on your British Cycling dashboard. You'll be able to download it from your event organiser useful resources. Fraser will just get on the screen again for us in a second. Is a really useful document, and it comes with these pre-populated things. So we're not expecting you to try and think up all these things from the start. And as usual with risk assessment, please make sure that it's relevant for your event. So don't have things in there which are not suitable for your event, and allow it to help you decide how you want to organise things. Like I say, that one needs to be uploaded 7 days prior to your event for any level of event that you're running. So that's us just quickly jumped through just a quick overview of the guidance document. Like I say, I've put the link in the chat box there to where it is. If you have any specific questions on that guidance, don't hesitate to drop us a wee email on
I think we've maybe lost Morven temporarily, so I'll get cracking on event classifications, and if she unfreezes, she can jump back in. So yeah, just to give an overview of, yeah, she's just messaged saying her Zoom's cut out, she's on her way back in. Right, I'll keep on going on event classifications and she can jump back in when she gets a chance. So yeah, so effectively, I guess the main thing we're going to touch on tonight is Go Race and Go Ride Racing. So Go Race is sometimes used as a bit of a kind of overarching name, but effectively Go Race is just a classification for circuit and track racing. It's an introductory level of racing open to 4th Cat riders with a full racing licence, provisional licence, and non-members. And the maximum time for a Go Race event can be 30 minutes. Go Race format is most commonly used in circuit events for a kind of taster type category. We also have Go Cross, Go Mountain Bike, and Go BMX, and these are effectively the discipline-specific versions of Go Race. So they kind of do what they say in the tin. They're flexible for organisers, so that you can modify the format of the event to make it accessible for all. And really, by that we mean it provides opportunities to have introductory events, come and try taster sessions. I've seen quite a lot of events in the past that will have ran the kind of come and try cyclocross events where you'll have coaching followed by a race will often be classified as Go Cross. There's no license points attached to the event, and they do not require a commissaire. Now I can see Morven's face appeared back in a box. So Morven, we just covered off, we've just given a quick overview of the different, what the event classifications mean, so you've not missed much.
Thanks, Fraser. You can tell I jumped out when I got technical. So sorry about that. My Zoom's quit entirely unexpectedly. Yeah, so as Fraser says, those are the event classifications that we can use for those Go options. I'm not sure whether Fraser said at the start, these are quite, they're not new classifications, but they're quite little known and little used. Both with ourselves and down south of British Cycling, these aren't classifications that we see happening very much previously. And COVID's given us a real opportunity to be able to use these event formats rather than just always putting things as non-ranking or regional C+. It does open up some of those more beginner options and being able to do something that's a wee bit different. So for example, we could see them as add-ons to full events. So say for example, you're wanting to run an event that's maybe got an open race AB format, but then you want to run a taster race alongside that. That's where you could use one of these Go classifications. You could also use it for something which you want to be a little bit more fun. Perhaps, for example, something that's a bit fancy press, it's got mixed groupings, perhaps something like a relay race, obviously with your physical distancing and no touching each other during that relay, but those kind of different formats, it's a really great way of doing them. Like I said, it's quite a new way of classifying events, so we are on this journey as well with you. We're really excited about sort of being able to use these a little bit more and hopefully engaging some different members of the cycling community by being able to offer formats of racing which are maybe not the standard ones that we're also used to seeing, that will be really exciting for all the new people that we've seen get on these bikes during lockdown. Just in terms of some of the practicalities, they are a £10 registration fee and they've got a levy of £1.50. They also don't need a commissaire to officiate on the racing. So they should be pretty simple, they should be straightforward, they should be fun, easy, and most importantly, safe and fair. And that's that. What Sue is any questions on them, pop them in the box and we'll have time for questions at the end. So anything that you're thinking and wondering of, just pop it in there and I'll quite happily answer them.
Perfect, thanks Marvin. Right, so I'm going to touch a little bit now on Go Ride Racing, which is probably something we certainly know a little bit more about, but something that we're still learning a lot about as well. So in terms of Go Ride Racing, in terms of who can access it, so the kind of Go Race formats that we touched on before, that's kind of accessible by any type of event organiser essentially. Go Ride Racing is just for clubs which are registered as Go Ride or accredited Go Ride clubs, and Scottish Cycling Go Ride staff. So we have our kind of regional Go Ride coaches working in Glasgow. They're able to deliver Go Ride Racing as well. It's designed for entry-level racing for riders under the age of 16, and it should be in a kind of fun and safe environment that would allow any bike to be used, and also considering opportunities for bikes to be available on loan so riders can try out different disciplines. Doesn't require a racing license, and it is a recognised event classification that covers 6 different disciplines. So you can incorporate different disciplines into the event, so it doesn't have to just be a mountain bike event. There could be the opportunity to try out different disciplines, or it could be exploring different races within a discipline. So, and also I guess the main thing that underpins it as well is that it only needs a level 2 coach and backed up by volunteers. If it's looking at one of the particular disciplines as well, it does need a discipline-specific coach that's matched up to what that discipline is, but that doesn't dictate the overall size of people that can participate. So the one thing that we have, which is a really useful resource for Go Ride Racing, is the Go Ride Racing Handbook. It's available on the website. I probably could set Morgan a bit of a test just now if she can find it and send the link in the chat. And it's got a kind of host of different ideas and some of the more detail about Go Ride Racing. But just to kind of touch on, I guess, some of the key points about Go Ride Racing. Down south, it's been really strongly backed by Sport England. So a lot of Go Ride clubs down in England have used it to promote their club in the local area by providing kind of entry-level accessible events and using it as an opportunity to increase club membership. A lot of people use it as well to bookend coaching blocks. So if you've been working on a certain discipline or a certain series of skills through a coaching block, it's good to then apply it in a competitive environment. It gives you opportunities to raise some funds for the club by opening up to new people, and also, tailor make the races to suit what you've been working on. I think the registration stuff pretty similar to the Go Race stuff. So it's £10 to register a Go Ride race, and then it's a levy of £1 per rider. The key thing for Go Ride Racing, which is probably different from the Go Race formats, is that all competitors must have the opportunity to compete in a minimum of 2 races per event. So what hopefully this video will play. So my own club in Falkirk, we ran a Go Ride race last year. So one of our parents made this video. Hopefully this will play, and this will give you a little bit of a taste of what a Go Ride race can look like. So that's, I guess, probably just to give you a bit of an overview of, I guess, what the day looks like for a kind of example go ride race. So what it gave us opportunity to do is you can use the normal age classifications, or you can mix things up a little bit. So what we've seen down south a lot. So this was part of a kind of weekend of go ride racing which took place last September and along the same time as the Road World Champs in Yorkshire. And a lot of people were looking at introducing kind of balance bike early pedalers type sessions the first time. So there's an opportunity to kind of bring in kind of younger riders. So we had kind of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds trying out some different stuff. And then your kind of usual age categories as well. So effectively, over the course of the morning and within 2 hours, the riders were able to do a kind of short time trial around the park, a skills station, a pace race, an elimination race, and then wrap it all up with a kind of full-on CX race at the end of it. Probably what it gave a good opportunity for youth clubs to do, and I've seen this in quite a few different areas, is to give the young people within the club that are maybe under 14s and under 16s that opportunity to volunteer and support the running of the event as well, taking on the scoring of the skills station, or being the pace rider within the pace race, or designing the courses, because it's that much more kind of coach-led, club-led racing. It lends itself to really kind of giving opportunities for new volunteers to kind of get involved. So we've got an overview document which gives you a taste of what all those different things look like. So there's like the longest glide, which is for balance bike and early pedalers. A time trial, obviously we all know what time trial is, but that was just kind of around the park on the grass. It's also got the pace race, which was another different format of racing for the day, and then also an elimination race as well. So it can use some types of racing that you might find in other disciplines, but apply it in for this one, it was a cyclocross environment, but there's been examples we've seen as well of it being applied in the mountain bike environment. So if you think about a normal race day for a rider, they could sometimes spend 2-3 hours at an event for a 10-minute race, but actually using this type of format through Go Ride Racing and the kind of coach-led racing, actually they were getting about 4 different opportunities to test themselves. So it wasn't always about being as fast as you can. There's also some skills elements in there as well. And that was actually really interesting to speak to parents and guardians about that too, because I think some parents, saw their child win one of the races, but didn't recognise that it was really important that they did kind of reasonably well in everything, because it all counted towards it. So we found it a really useful format to use to try something different. And there we go, frozen again. So you've also got your kind of typical things like skill stations, and then also the kind of usual cyclocross race as well. There's a kind of overview of, I guess, what that volunteer ask is in terms of the event. So it's probably not much different from a normal event, because the number of riders in each of the different races at one time is quite small, but it lended itself really well to involving young people. So we've put all this in a kind of overview document, which is going to sit on the Go Ride Racing section of the website, which we can send a link out to in the follow-up email, which hopefully gives some ideas about different ways you could do it. Because it is coach-led racing, so the first aid can be covered off by some of the coaches within the club. We're located next to a sports centre, so we didn't need to worry about having toilets. We didn't go for having any prizes as such. We just had a couple of giveaways that came with the overall event. Actually, the costs were really low in making the event happen. So it meant in terms of entries, we kept it, I think it was £3 or £4, and then you took the levy off. There was a couple of pound there, which just about kind of covered the kind of race tape and that kind of thing. So it's a really accessible format as well. One thing that we've seen from the Go Ride coaches working down south is they've used it as a really effective way to engage people from kind of less affluent backgrounds into bike racing, because of the low cost. Sometimes they're able to attract funding to remove the cost completely, and also partner up with other community organisations to provide bikes for riders to race on and that kind of thing. So it's a potential massive area for clubs to look at how they can kind of link in with what's going on in the community to get more people involved in the sport. Not necessarily involved in their clubs on a long-term basis, but creating those kind of one-off opportunities to try out a variety of different cycling activities. We've got another video there, but we don't see that. It's just me again. But we'll share that out as well. So that's effectively Go Ride Racing. So I guess the main points for Go Ride Racing is that it can only be undertaken by Go Ride registered or Go Ride accredited clubs. If you need to know more information about Go Ride, the accreditation program, then just drop me an email and we can catch up on that. And really, yeah, it's level 2 coach-led racing, and there's no need for a commissaire at the event. It's very much looking at the coaches and club volunteers taking the lead on making the event really developmental focused for riders. There's not as much focus on entry level as there is perhaps maybe in Go Race, Go Cross, because it's really about just providing lots of different opportunities for riders to try out different things and kind of find out where their strengths are. So for us, I also you'll be aware that we've done some work looking at the regional series over the last few months, and hopefully we'll have some information to share on that soon. And we really want to see a really strong level of Go Ride racing happening below the regional series, because that's one of the probably the principal findings that's come out, is that having more entry-level, accessible, varied formats of racing across the calendar would be really good to see. So the more of this that can happen, the more different stories we can hopefully share about different race formats. There is some good examples from down south that we hope to be able to share as well, and we'll just keep adding that onto the resources section on the Go Ride Racing section of the website. So yeah, we just want to keep that as live as we can as more racing happens. And that's it from me, Morven, on Go Ride Racing.
Brilliant. So we kind of hope that we've provided, we're going to go into some questions, and it would be great to have a wee bit of discussion. It's been a very quiet chat box tonight. So either we've provided you with loads of answers, or you've maybe got so much many thoughts going on in your head that you're needing a wee bit more time to think about it. But what to do is stuff that's coming to mind, do pop it in that chat box just now, and we'll get to those questions. I have lost the chat from prior to my computer cutting out, so if there were questions that we haven't answered at that point, then I will just I'll need to get Fraser to be sent to check those. But what we wanted to do is, when we wanted to highlight these entry-level fun racing experiences and opportunities, I'm sure you will all have seen how many more people there are on their bikes, and that huge demand that there is sort of for cycling. We did a survey into lockdown to find out sort of that appetite for riders' return to racing, and it was huge. There's so much enthusiasm out there. However, I do think that enthusiasm will last, so please don't feel pressurised at that stage, because that enthusiasm's there that you need to put something on immediately. But it is to say we do have people who do want to get on their bikes and compete, and now is such a good time to try some of these new formats, see what we can do that's a wee bit different, and hopefully try and inspire and engage the next generation. And I don't just mean that by young people, but the next wave of people that are going to take part in our events regularly going forward. So that's basically where we're at. So in terms of the questions in the chat box, Paul has asked about the normal risk assessments to provide for a Go Ride event in order to receive an event permit. So the risk assessment that you do for your Go Ride event would be your coaching risk assessment for the Go Ride racing events, whereas for Go Race and Go Mountain Bike, Go Cross, you would use one of those event risk assessments. So there is that differentiation. We did want to put these two categories of events together on this call tonight, because they're the same. They've got the same purpose. They're both supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be entry level. They're supposed to be developmental. But they have got quite different sort of routes that you go down. So the Go events, as Fraser said, the Go Ride Racing for the under 16s, the Go Ride Club one. However, the Go Race, Go Mountain Bike, Go Cross, Go BMX, that is for, you don't need to be Go Ride accredited. It's nothing to do with that system. It is a bit confusing because we use the word Go for both. However, that is open, and you do use your standard event risk assessment for those Go Race, Go Mountain Bike, etc., Go Cross. Fraser, was there any other questions from before my computer cut out?
Yeah, I'm just looking at a question from Colin Esselmont about what the guidance was on timing chips.
Perfect. Yeah, so in terms of the timing chips, what we're saying in terms of equipment is as little event equipment as possible, because we know that's one of the big touch points. However, timing chips are possible. We're not saying that you shouldn't use those, as long as you've got systems in place for collection and return of timing chips that is as contact free as possible. So again, like I was saying, the big clip and lock tubs, what we've heard of is events, the timing chips go in the rider envelope, and whatever your sign-on process, whether that's giving them to the riders in the car or whether that's contact-free sign-on, the riders get their timing chips as contact-free as possible, and then at the end of the race, they return to the big clip and lock style tubs or some sort of bucket, which then goes back in a car and is either washed in hot soapy water or is left for 72 hours, so it's left for long enough, as per sort of the general guidance. So timing chips are allowed, but again, as contact free as possible, as with everything. And that goes for all equipment. So we're not saying that there's any equipment that you shouldn't use. However, as far as possible, where you can, reduce that equipment down, because it will avoid as many contact points as possible. Was there anything else, Fraser?
Nope, I think that was it. I think. Oh, there's another question just going. What's the guidance on dealing with administering first aid from Rosie? So there is actually, Rosie, on the Scottish Cycling website, there's a whole guidance document on first aid. First aid obviously is essential to still be administered, but there are mitigating measures that are outlined in the document, such as having a face covering for the person who's administering and also the person that's receiving first aid, and probably just being a little bit more cautious on cleaning hands, etc. afterwards, and making sure that you're disposing of things. But the first aid guidance is on the website, so that document was last updated on the 11th of September. I know there's a current, we're currently looking into some of the questions around extension. So at the moment, the extension was just until the 30th of September for first aid qualifications that had expired after the start of lockdown, and people haven't been able to renew them. We're still waiting to get clarity on that, as whether there'll be a further extension. So hopefully that update will be coming out in the next week or so, so people will know what the status is on that, because we do appreciate there hasn't been many opportunities yet to get onto first aid courses.
Yeah, a question here. In the past, for Go Ride or Go Race or Go Ride races, we've ended up having a commissaire. There's been more demand to have commissaires there. And it's always been a big discussion amongst my fellow commissaires about supporting them. We're more than happy, and it's more, I think, parental control than actual competitors.
Yeah,
from that, it said there was no requirement to have it, but we were always getting pushed.
I think
the last Go Ride race I did, there was a demand for a commissaire to be there, so we ended up doing it. I know Martin Harris and that's planning on a race in November, and I've been asked to commissaire at that.
Yeah, I think from when I've spoken to I guess other event organisers about this before, I totally get that in terms of the cajoling of parents is probably why I called on you, Colin, to come and help me in the SXC last year. But it obviously it's not compulsory, but actually it can be incorporated as part of a Go Ride race in terms of introducing the role of a commissaire, is what I've heard of from some people before, because I guess, not that you're scary, but perhaps some people could find the men and women in grey a bit scary, so actually it could be used as a bit more of an educational opportunity in terms of explaining what a commissaire does and that kind of thing. I think it's about, is that right, Morgan?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So the racing itself is all overseen by, and the sort of risk assessment process is all done by the level 2 coaches, as opposed to in a non-go ride racing event where it's done by the event organizer with the support of the commissaire or the official. So there's absolutely nothing which says that you cannot have a commissaire at a go ride racing event. It is possible, but the role of a commissaire at that event isn't to sort of oversee the racing. It is one of those situations whereby it is the level 2 coach that's sort of in charge of the event, as it were, and that would be the one that's sort of responsible for what happens on the day. But like Fraser says, it is a fantastic learning opportunity, because that's what the go ride racing should be. It should be a developmental learning thing that sort of provides the riders with all the tools and skills and stuff that they need to be able to go on to compete sort of as they progress their way through the racing level. So it's a good education opportunity if it's sort of done correctly.
Yeah, that's what I've used it for in the past with the wee ones, because they're not going to listen to you half the time anyway, but it's there so they know who that person in grey is. There's to kind of control. But where I was coming from is with all the COVID controls, it's probably not a bad thing having a commissary there, because we're the ones that'll go around and make sure everything's in place and sign on and just oversee the running of the race.
Yeah, I think definitely in the return to competition guidance webinar, I actually touched on it that while everything that we're saying is that there should be as few people as possible in attendance at your event at any one time, which obviously does include your event volunteer, your event sort of workforce that go into making the events happen. Mm-hmm. There is still a number of people which is necessary to make these events run successfully, and actually we might see that in this sort of new format of races that we have at the end of this year, actually the number of volunteers is maybe slightly increased, because that's what we need to organise racing, which is safe in line with the COVID sort of adaptations and mitigations to help support people getting into the right places at the right time. So as few people as possible, but actually that might mean slightly more numbers from now, as long as they're physically distancing.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea keeping the number throughout the series as well. I think we should do that for SXC, make life easier.
Definitely would help.
There's a couple of questions in there from Colin. So the cap of 30 applies to adult racing across all classifications, but it's not in place for young people. The question on a more sustainable course tape, I actually think the SXC moved to biodegradable course tape this year. They only used it at one round, so it might be biodegradable by now. But we can pass on that contact for you to find out where they got it from, because I know it. Actually, I saw it and it didn't seem massively different from the Euro stuff. But that's certainly a big consideration for a lot of event organisers, to make sure that we're not just dumping all this plastic everywhere. We got
biodegradable cable ties for tying on the numbers as well.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
Yeah, they've seemed to have worked. And they lasted through a race as well, which was the other thing we were worried about.
Morven, question from Paul about do entrants need to pay to use the BC Online entry system for Go Ride events?
Yeah, so it is one of the slight challenges, I suppose, of the British Cycling Online entry system, is that there is no way of offering free events, as it were. There will always be that £1 charge to get people entered into the events. So they do need to pay to use it for the Go Ride events, for the Go Ride racing events. So just be mindful of that, and if it is something you need to consider, there are other online entry systems. Obviously, we would prefer it if you were to use a British Cycling Online entry system, but think about what's best for your event, and also what for the target audience that you're going to be working with for your event, what's going to be the best way to facilitate that for them. Perfect. I think that's us from the chat. Is it, Fraser?
Yeah, that's us.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, on that note, Fraser, have you got anything else to add?
I haven't nothing massive really. Probably just to encourage everyone to just keep checking in on the guidance stuff. So we also had our last update day last Thursday, so that will also repeat every 3 weeks. We're in a fairly good position at the moment in terms of having that exemption for sport and physical activity, but it's probably who knows how quickly things could change. So obviously most clubs now have got their COVID coordinators in place, so if for any clubs on the call anything that does change will come through COVID coordinators as soon as we know. But yeah, just keep sharing as your activities recommence as well. It's been great to see stuff coming through over the last few weeks. And yeah, just use the club development email address if there's any particular questions. We've got that. People are watching that throughout the week to make sure that we can get back to people as soon as they can.
Perfect. I'm just going to get the links up for that I'd mentioned about Southern XC and the Bovingdon Bomber. So let me just grab some of these for you quickly.
Did you do that because you saw Sarah's comment, or is it just you just insist that Sarah wrote?
I would love to say that I just had an inspired thought and needed to remember that I do it, but Sarah's comment really got me there. So what I've done is in the chat box, I've shared the link to the Southern XC. It's a really, really good example of an event. It's gone to quite a length actually to put additional information in there for the riders, and it's put quite a lot of adaptations in place. So I talked about this on the last webinar that we did. There's sort of two routes that you can go down, one which is very much being very, very explicit about all the changes that people are really, really fully aware of it. There's also then the other route, which is the Bovingdon Bomber Circuit series link that I put in there. They're a bit more subtle about some of the changes which are in place, but they do still spell them out as much as the riders need to know. So there's kind of those two ways to consider doing it, and that might actually be useful for both events and club activity. So Southern XC have got loads of information in there. If you have just a wee click through their sort of website in general, you'll see sort of how they've been organising their events. There are a few events in now actually, so they've got a few tried and tested methods. One thing to note is that they were doing time trial formats just because we had slightly different restrictions up in England and Scotland. So do bear that in mind, that obviously we are able to have that bunch racing format now, but it's a really good way to sort of show those examples of having different groups, the different times at which they arrive, and sort of that staggered arrival in car parks and sign-ons to sort of really reduce the overlap of people. And the Bovingdon Bomber is just quite a nice example. It's a very set up circuit race series. It's your classic crit racing, fully lycraed up, racing hard. But they've just sort of thought of different ways of awarding prizes. They've got a slightly different series element within this non-ranking format, and just one or two wee quirks that I thought was really good to share. So have we look through those links and just let us know if there's any questions. Perfect. Okay, so on that note, what to do is, as Fraser said, please do stay in touch with us. Some of the examples that I've been able to share are because of things that I've either heard people starting to talk about up in Scotland, or we know have been tried and tested down in England. So please do share your thoughts with us. If you even just want to ask questions, discuss things specifically, I'm aware that both of these formats, they are quite new up in Scotland. So take time, go away and think about them, see if you can make them work for your club or your event. If you want to give them a shot, please don't hesitate to get in touch with either me and the events team, or you can speak to Fraser from the club development team, or even both of us. And we really look forward to seeing some sort of new and innovative events appearing on the calendar, because there's never been a better time to do it. People are all geared up to try something different, I think. So on that note, massive thank you to everyone who's come along this evening. We hope it's been informative and helpful, and we'll be in touch with sort of future details of any other upcoming webinars as we go, and obviously we'll share any other guidance updates. But on that note, many thanks to everyone for coming, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thanks, bye.